Story RH, the podcast that makes a long story short.
Welcome to all.
History is made of stories.
In this episode, we'll be talking about autonomy.
Autonomy is one of the founding principles of management, and yet it's been forgotten for years, at least at certain companies, to such an extent that we may need to talk about it like a brand new concept.
Autonomy, freedom, and independence. All these words feel like an essay prompt for high schoolers, right? Should we set autonomy free? What's the story?
We're not going to have a philosophical debate about freedom here, a complex concept if ever there was one. However, we can take a look at a few aspects to better understand management in the context of the business world.
Autonomy is about having the freedom to act in line with rules you've set out for yourself. So, to be autonomous is to choose your own rules. In other words, being autonomous is about deciding freely how to organize your approach to whatever you have to do.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that you get to choose everything you do. The existence of a framework to structure this freedom is precisely what makes it possible. That is the major difference with the general conception of freedom, which people tend to simplify as doing what you want.
So being autonomous isn't doing what you want. It's having the liberty to organize your approach within a given framework.
And given this context, autonomy is absolutely indissociable from the concept of delegation. Delegation is the freeing framework given by the delegator to the delegatee. The delegator sets the framework for the responsibility being handed to the delegatee. Moreover, the delegator still holds ultimate responsibility for tasks delegated.
And the delegator isn't just your manager. It could also be a project manager who isn't your manager in terms of hierarchy.
So, to sum things up, you're saying that autonomy is about organizing our time as we see fit within a given framework.
Yes, but we have to be careful with the terms as we see fit. The delegatee can't be guided exclusively by what suits them.
The delegatee's choices cannot be guided by their own immediate interest or what's easiest for them.
You can't do as you please with autonomy. You can't enjoy the freedom afforded by a framework by doing whatever you want. This freedom is, at its most basic, guided by principles, shared values, and the common good, aka the project you're contributing to.
So, autonomy, yes, but not on your own, because a company is a collective entity.
And these principles you've mentioned are what we might call discipline, insofar as it's related to the term disciple. In other words, a collection of rules for behavior that allows a group to function properly when its members follow and respect them.
This respect is a kind of responsibility, and responsibility is about responding to something. To the law, of course, which is what we call legal responsibility, but also to others. At a company, you're not alone.
So, how is this different from freedom? Freedom does also include the idea of responsibility, doesn't it? We all know the adage, one person's freedom ends where another's begins.
Yes, the concepts of autonomy and freedom both involve the idea of responsibility. But at a company, there's a relationship of subordination, a contract, and a mission to fulfill. The difference comes from the constraints born of each person's commitment to the collective mission, and to the collective organization of work which that entails.
And that, of course, takes us back to the basics of management, delegation, autonomy, trust, and verification.
To recap, freedom is about determining your own actions with no commitment-based constraints. At a company where you are constrained by your commitment to a mission to fulfill, autonomy is about organizing your choices within a given framework. So, it is precisely because this freeing framework is there that autonomy is possible. Is that right?
Exactly right. Way to make a long story short. Story RH, the podcast that makes a long story short.